Are you aware? If you're not, you should be. The United States of America leads the world in the incarceration of our people, both by sheer numbers as well as per capita. We did the statistics recently. I think it's every 43 seconds nationwide, someone is arrested for a marijuana offense. Every 43 seconds, 24 hours a day, across our country, someone is arrested for a marijuana offense, and something on the order of 80% of those arrests are only for possession. What are we doing? We lead the world in the incarceration of our people. We have now about 2.3 million people incarcerated in the United States of America today. Japan has 1/10 of that. We have more people than the European Union incarcerated, and we have only a quarter or a third of their population. So it just doesn't make sense. There must be a better way. There is a better way, and that is repeal drug prohibition. That does not mean that I condone using any of these drugs, although I openly acknowledge to you that using marijuana is far less dangerous than my drug of choice, once again, which is alcohol. But nevertheless, these are things that we simply must realize. Our children will understand that just because we're no longer making these drugs illegal, even though they can be harmful, we're not condoning it. We do not have cigarettes illegal in our world today. Yes, they are regulated and controlled. Yes, we have age restrictions, thankfully. But we do not condone, the government doesn't condone smoking cigarettes. The government doesn't condone drinking alcohol. Our children will understand that. And these are all things that we must get across to our voters and to our politicians. Because from my perch on the bench, and I've seen this for so long, you know, the tougher we get with regard to drug crime, literally the softer we get with regard to the prosecution of everything else. We only have so many resources for the criminal justice system. And I actually wrote another book, Why Our Drug Laws Have Failed, and I cited statistics that in 1980 we were twice as successful in prosecuting homicides as we were in 1990. Think again. 1980 we were twice as successful in prosecuting homicides as we were 10 years later in 1990. Why? Because the Reagan administration once again ratcheted up the war on drugs, and we're using all these resources against nonviolent drug offenders, which literally meant that people involved with rape, robbery, and murder were not being prosecuted nearly as strictly. That's stupid. The tougher we get with drug crime, the softer we get with regard to the prosecution of everything else. Why in heaven's name should anyone be prosecuted for peacefully using marijuana? It makes no sense whatsoever. None. We've traditionally done it, but it has its roots, by the way. All of these laws of prohibition, by the way, have their roots in racism. You know, what the first prohibitionist law was in the United States of America was the opium dens in San Francisco. I stand before you and say, we didn't care whatsoever what those Chinese men were doing on their opium, but we were concerned that they were going to lure white women into a life of depravity, and therefore we made it illegal. Cocaine was for the blacks. You know, these blacks were going to get high on cocaine and assault our white women. Marijuana, look, I've seen the congressional record when they passed the Marijuana Tax Act, 1933. The people in Congress didn't even know what marijuana was. They thought it was a narcotic, for heaven's sake. And it was amazing. They had no idea that they were making hemp illegal. Had they said, wait a minute, marijuana is hemp, they never would have passed it. Ignorance, but it was those Mexicans. And that's why the marijuana was prohibited. Not actually prohibited, they were really smart. They made it a Marijuana Tax Act. They only prohibited it in the Nixon administration, but they put a tax of so strong on it that if you're going to be involved in a $10 transaction for marijuana, there was like a $15 tax, and then if you didn't pay the tax, you'd be prosecuted. So that's the whole idea. Really hard on me as a judge enforcing laws that had their roots in racism. I do it, but I don't have to be quiet about it. And that's not necessarily a reason at this point to repeal them, although it is. But there's so many other reasons to do it as well. The biggest failed policy in the history of the United States of America is what? drug prohibition, second only to slavery, and again, I'm not at all sure that it's only second. So this is what I have done. I've been speaking publicly about this. I've been on the O'Reilly Factor. I'm on lots of various TV shows or whatever. I'm going to be going to Mexico pretty soon. I was in Laredo about 3 weeks ago. This is the most important thing I can do for the country I love. The most patriotic thing I can do for the country I love is help us repeal drug prohibition, and you can do the same. And the best way of doing it is saying, oh, this is such an enormous task. And of course it is. But we have a remedy in sight, in hand, and that is regulate marijuana like wine. Again, look at the petition. It's over here at the normal booth. It's over here and several other booths, Gary Johnson's as well as one for LEAP. LEAP stands for Law Enforcement Against Prohibition. They are a speakers group of people that were or are involved in law enforcement that speak the truth with regard to the failure of drug prohibition. So we have these petitions. Talk to me afterwards and I'll direct you to a place where you can sign it. You make sure that you sign, if you're a registered voter, that you can do. And this will sweep the country. We will then show the nation and the world that this works.